Alright, so I've got a Nissan Pathfinder that I've done air ride on, and we have got a fender today we're going to be working on. This is going to be a four-wheel drive fender for the Pathfinder or the D21 hard bodies. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to shave this antenna hole. So I'll show you how to weld that up, or how I weld that up. So I'll catch you back on in a second. To get started, what I'm going to do is take this 16 gauge steel and I'm going to cut out a piece to cover the back side of the hole. I'm going to use some tin snips. Alright, I've got my piece cut that I need to put on the back side here, and if you look in the light you can see that the body is not shaped perfect. It'll catch the light right there. So it's going to require some body filler to get this perfectly straight anyway. I don't like it being a hair high right there. So I'm going to see if I can knock that down just a little bit before I scuff this paint off. Once I scuff the paint, I'm not going to be able to see that as easy. That right there is probably about as good as I'm really going to get it. It is a hair low right here. But after I weld and grind, this is going to need a little bit more anyway. So it's going to have some body filler. So at this point, what I'm going to do is take my DA and use 36 grit. That's an old piece, but we're just scratching some paint off. It's like an E-coat. So we're just going to get that down to bare metal right around that area, and I'll cut you back on. Alright. My air compressor is in the next room over there, and I do not regret moving it. I would never have been able to video this with that compressor in this room. So now what I'm going to do is fit this on the back side, and I will weld around everything. I'm going to have to weld real slow, and I'm going to make sure on my welder, this is a Miller-Matic, I'm going to make sure that I have the 0.24, or is it 0.024, just not the 30 wire, it's the 24 wire. I'll make sure that's what I've got on here, and then I will get to welding. I'm going to set my dial at about 25 while pulling the trigger. It should be good. And then I will set this to, I'll probably go right there, that's like 17 gauge, and put that on 0.024. My wire is actually 0.023, but basically same thing. And now I'm ready to weld. So I've got some tools. Hold on, let me see if I can find them. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll cut a piece and make it fit perfect inside that hole, and then I will flush weld everything. This does not have to be that precise, really. I'm going to use these little neodymium magnets. They look like little pellets. I bet if you swallowed these, it would not be cool, so keep these away from your kids. They would make your intestines stick together as they went through, most likely. These are very strong. I can barely get them apart, so I'm going to pause you. So I just kind of placed them around, and if I was doing a flush fit, then I would have to overlap this like that and fit it flush, and then be real careful to have it perfectly level, and that's not required on this. I'm just going to use a little filler. It's not even maybe a credit card thickness, so it's not a big deal. Alright, I'm going to tack weld that. Alright, so the plan basically is to let this cool off at this point to where I can touch it, and then I will continue and tack weld around. Basically, I will weld in between the two, and in between those two, and over here, and let it cool. And just a few welds at a time, not to ever let this get hot. I can barely touch this right now, and I do not want that any hotter than that. This metal is thin and it will warp very easily, so you just have to take your time. I'll cut you back on. So there's after the next step of welding, and I'm letting this cool off. And here is the bumper that I'm planning to use. This was on another truck. I built this bumper from a one-piece, like a 96, 97 hardbody, and I just put this plate in here and cut that out with the plasma cutter. I cut used a round hole saw and cut the ends, and then I just connected the dots with the plasma cutter. And then I used an exhaust reducer right here, welded that in, and there we have that. Kind of cool. But then I sold the truck, and the bumper got messed up, and he paid me to replace the bumper with a more stock one. For simplicity, I guess. I don't know, but he wanted me to throw this one away, so I kept it. I'm going to see if I can fix this bumper for this build. It is warped here, and it's smashed there. There's a good chance that I will not be able to fix this bumper. If it tweaked the bumper too much on the ends, if it twisted it in any way, then I'm probably just going to build a different bumper. I'm going to see if I can knock this out right here while I'm waiting on this to cool off. Just give me something to do. I'm kind of impatient. I have ADHD, and I cannot just sit here and look at that for 10 minutes and wait on another weld. So my phone's about dead. I'm going to stick this thing on the charger. I'm going to beat on that bumper, and I'm going to come back and weld on that a few more times, and I will cut you back on. So that looks like a clobbered up mess, but it's just a bunch of tack welds, and I am about to grind this down. I'm going to use this flap disc, and I might go get a brand new one because this is kind of a tedious thing. I like to use new ones for the little tedious things. I'm gonna have to find an extension cord, but this is what I've got on the bumper, and what I'm doing is I'm looking down at this top lip, and I'm seeing if it's warped. I can look down at this direction, and I can hold it up, and I can look down at this direction, and I can look at how that curve right there is shaped. And I can also, while I'm holding it, I can look and see how the dent is coming out by looking at it like this. So you can see I've got a few low spots. It's not terribly low anymore. I'm tempted just to try to fill that. I mean, the more I beat on it, the more likely I will be to twist this one side or the other and warp it. If it's warped now, then I guess it'll just be a wall hanger. But I tried to put it on my Pathfinder. I flipped these lights on. And so this is the Pathfinder. Alright. And it appears to line up with this grill perfectly fine. But that grill belongs on this truck. I'm going to use this grill on this Pathfinder, and basically these are aluminum and that is stainless. So this is the old trends from early 2000s that you cannot get any longer. And that grill is 17 bars, matches these with the diameter between, and this grill does not match it. So I'm gonna swap it out with what is on this truck. And I started sanding this down because I pretty much had that bumper where I wanted it. So I was just using like a 320 dry, just scuffing it. And any shiny spots, that's still shiny right there. Any shiny spots I'll have to come back and hit a little bit more, because, and all this, I'll probably get that with a 3M, like a Scotch-Brite pad. And I have this is Orion. This the body filler, premium body filler and anti-corrosion body filler. And I will probably use both of those. Maybe not so much on this project because it's tiny. Maybe on that bumper, but I'll figure out which is which on that, and I'll get back with you in just a minute. Alright, so I just went back and read Tammy's message that she had sent about this Bondo. This one is a pinhole free body filler. She said it sands very smooth, and she said this one is more like the finishing putty would be, anti-corrosion. So I'm not needing much. It's just a little bitty tiny spot, so I'm gonna go ahead and tear into this anti-corrosion one, and we'll see if we can just knock that dent out. Alright, cut you back on. Alrighty, so I used my flap disc on my grinder, got it down pretty flat, and kept feeling of it and finding any high spots that need to be knocked down. And then I took my 36 grit on my DA, and I have a tiny low spot right there, but nothing like that's gonna be credit card thickness or so. So I am going to just go ahead and fill that, and I will block that down with a long block. I'll start with 80 grit and work my way up until I'm satisfied with it being perfectly smooth. And I'll show you my blocks and stuff as I go. I was going to show you something on here, but I don't remember what it was. It was a few steps ago, so maybe it will come back to me. But this body filler takes a little bit longer to cure than what I'm used to, and I sanded a little early, which is not a problem. But now this sandpaper is no good, but it's fairly flat, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes to just cure out a little bit more, and then I will add a very thin skim coat on top of that. And once I do that, I will come back and I will put in some of this 180 grit on a longer block. This one is kind of squishy, and I really don't want a squishy block, so I'm going to step up. That one's a little bit too short. I'm going to probably grab this block. I've got some of these that are very long, but this one is going to be good, I think. So what I'm going to do is just pick one that will get that nice and flat. So I think that will be great. And I've took a gray Scotch-Brite because getting in these little crevices with sandpaper is kind of difficult. I'm going to hit that a little bit more, and this will pretty much be ready for primer. I'm going to let this kind of vapor off overnight, and then I will primer this tomorrow. And I'm going to use Orion's primer. It is an epoxy. It's dark in here again. Let's see if we can catch this though. That is epoxy primer and the hardener. So I'm going to use that on both of my front fenders. I will scuff this one and get it prepped in the morning prior to spraying. And that primer, I believe, has a 30-minute, what do they call it, where it has to sit for 30 minutes after mixing the hardener in it and stirring it good. And you just let it sit for 30 minutes before you spray. So I'll put it in my mixing cup and I will mix that up, stir it up good, and wait 30 minutes. Induction time, maybe. And then I will, at that point, filter screen it into my gun and spray it at that point with a 2.5 tip so I can get it nice and thick. And that should take several days actually to cure. So my video will stop with primer tomorrow. So alright, I'll cut you back on in a minute. So I'm about an hour and 40 minutes into this from the start of this video till now, and I have worked on the bumper and this fender, and it is looking pretty good. But the Bondo, if it wasn't 62 degrees and I'd given it a few more minutes extra, then this wouldn't have happened, I'm sure, because that sanded out perfectly smooth. That is definitely ready for primer. So there is nothing wrong with that. So in the morning I'm going to scuff this and we will show you the primer. Alright, I'll cut you back on. Alright, I've got my little fender door, whatever, stand with the little cushies on top. I went ahead and got it out, took everything off the sawhorses, and I'm going to primer the back side and then the front side. So I just kind of scuffed this up a little bit, and then I used a wax and grease remover and just a shop towel. I know that's going to leave lint, but this is just epoxy primer. And what I've done is, there's the Orion epoxy, and I have to let this sit. It is 1:38, so this is Tuesday. I'm still a little bit sick, but I'm getting over it. So I've got 30 minutes to kill. I'm gonna go wash a car, or I wouldn't normally mow my yard while I'm waiting on, or while I'm about to paint, stir stuff up in the air. But this is just epoxy primer. It is going to get sanded and recovered and multiple times, so I don't really care too much as long as I don't get some kind of big thing going on, or fish eyes or something like that. And from previous experience with this, if you don't let this sit for 30 minutes, then you will get fish eyes, because I have done that. Alright, so should be stirred up good. I'll cut you back on a little bit. Alright, so it has actually been about 40 minutes, and I filtered my paint as I put it through, and this stuff covers real well, so it should be enough paint. This is a 2.5 tip gun, so I can spray really thick material with this. And I am just going to spray the back side and flip it over, and then spray the front side, and then call it a day. I'll cut you back on and show you what I got. So I am laying in this gray. The back side of where I was welding looks like that. I will just come in and put some rubberized undercoat around that, and seal the back side so I don't have to worry about any rust. This epoxy primer is going to seal this up really nice though. Alright, I'll cut you back on in a second. And here we are with the fresh primer. So with it shiny, you can look down and you can see in the reflection that is where the antenna was, and it looks pretty good now. There is a little spot right in here that is not perfect, but I can't even really tell too much. We're just gonna call that good. That's how much paint that I had left. I'm gonna go ahead and trash that, clean my gun up, and alright, keep in touch for more of this build, and I'll see you next time.